On December 6, 1865, the 13th Amendment was made to the Constitution of the United States, which abolished slavery. Thanks to the 13th Amendment, you all live at peace knowing that the demon that once deprived innocent victims of their freedom is gone. Well, today I'm here to inform you that slavery is not gone. It is alive and it is thriving. All it's done is taken a new form, and it's now termed human trafficking. The United Nations has developed a legitimate definition in which human trafficking shall mean the recruitment, transportation, transfer, and/or harboring persons by means of threats or force or other forms such as coercion, abduction, fraud, deception, all for the purpose of exploitation. Human trafficking is often divided into 4 types of modern slavery. These are sexual exploitation, which is also considered to be sex trafficking, forced labor, domestic servitude, and organ harvesting. Forced labor is the term used to describe the act of forcing laborers to work tremendous amount of hours with little to no pay. These workers are often held in confined quarters with no exposure to the outside world. Their only concern should be to work. Domestic servitude is one of the hardest crimes to detect because to an observer, a domestic servant will not seem to be in any danger, but oftentimes a worker may be threatened to work ridiculous hours and may experience physical abuse from his or her employer. Another form of human trafficking is organ harvesting, which is the act of robbing or murdering a person for his heart, kidneys, liver, and anything that is worth something in the black organ market. Sexual exploitation or sex trafficking is a horrific crime of enslaving a victim and forcing them to perform sexual acts on clients who pay their oppressor. The United Nations reported that 79% of all human trafficking activity is sexual exploitation, followed by forced labor, which makes up 18%. Victims of sex trafficking are often tortured physically and mentally by their aggressors in order for the victims to comply with their heinous demands. Siddharth Kara uses real-life examples of sex trafficking in his book, Sex Trafficking: Inside the Business of Modern Slavery. Excuse me. He mentions a 15-year-old girl from Thailand named Sunny, who was offered a job as a waitress at a German restaurant in Thailand. Sunny was so delighted to have found a job in which she could help provide her ailing father with expensive medications. The job turned out to be a lie. She was transferred to the U.S. and forced to work as a sex slave at a massage parlor in Los Angeles. Sunny was raped and whipped by several men the first night she refused to work as a slave. Although she was miserable, the threats that were made by her trafficker were what kept her imprisoned. She preferred to be enslaved than for her family to be in harm's way. Sadly, this horrible crime is the most prominent kind of human trafficking. The U.S. Department of State is well aware that although some cases involve abduction, sexual exploitation is often achieved through debt bondage, a form of coercion that involves demanding a wrongful debt from a victim in order to keep them hostage. The frustrating aspect of human trafficking is not knowing the exact number that are being affected and where they're being held. This is because most victims fear their aggressor and are left to live in the shadows. Organizations such as Abolition International, UNICEF, the Salvation Army, and the Polaris Project are working alongside with government agencies like the United Nations, the Department of Health and Human Services, the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security. All this is to help alleviate the horror that is human trafficking. It's almost impossible to get to the core of the problem worldwide because of unattainable facts and numbers. So our Congress passed the Trafficking Victims Protection Act in 2000 along with the Trafficking in Persons Report, which is a principal diplomatic tool to engage foreign governments and educate them on human trafficking. This information can all be found on the U.S. Department of State website. This report sets standards in order to advance anti-trafficking reforms and to target resources on prevention, protection, and prosecution programs. The TIP consists of 3 tiers, which are levels of government involvement, and works as a record of efforts made by a government to comply with the minimum standards for elimination of trafficking. You can also do your part in abolishing modern slavery by looking out for odd activity within your community. The only way to successfully put an end to this atrocity is to be aware and educated of the crime.